You know, friends, we've been hearing a lot about catch and kill in Donald Trump's New York State Court prosecution. Well, more and more, it's looking like federal court judge Aileen Cannon has caught and killed Donald Trump's Florida case. That's his prosecution for illegally retaining classified documents, obstructing justice, and violating our nation's espionage laws. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, Trump-appointed Judge Aileen Cannon, who is presiding over Donald Trump's federal prosecution down in Florida, just canceled a previously set trial date. The trial date had been set for May 20th, and Judge Cannon announced that she will be setting no trial date. You know, what's going on down in Florida actually reminds me of some of what we've been hearing in Donald Trump's state court prosecution up in New York. Recall the evidence that David Pecker, head of the National Enquirer tabloid magazine, was running a corrupt catch-and-kill scheme, together with Michael Cohen and Donald Trump, to try to help Donald Trump in the 2016 presidential election? Well, now it looks like Judge Aileen Cannon is running her own catch-and-kill scheme, refusing to set a trial date in Donald Trump's federal prosecution in Florida, which undoubtedly is helping him in the 2024 presidential election. Maybe we should start referring to Judge Cannon as Judge Aileen Pecker Cannon. Let's start with the new reporting. This from Politico. Headline: Judge Cannon indefinitely postpones Trump's classified documents trial. And that article begins, the judge presiding over Donald Trump's criminal case in Florida on charges that he hoarded classified secrets at his Mar-a-Lago estate after his presidency has indefinitely postponed the trial, once scheduled for May 20th. The date had been widely expected to move amid a tangle of pretrial conflicts between special counsel Jack Smith and Trump's attorneys. Smith had urged Judge Aileen Cannon to reschedule the trial to begin on July 8, but an order from the judge on Tuesday afternoon suggested that she's unlikely to even decide on a new trial date before late July. And friends, one other important addition to this story, which was earlier reported by Politico, Trump, in a competing filing, offered an alternative proposal, an August 12 start date. So keep that in mind. Jack Smith, the prosecutor, suggested a July trial date. Donald Trump and his lawyers suggested an August trial date. The article continues. Cannon, a Trump appointee who took the bench in late 2020, indicated in the order that before setting a new trial date, she intends to resolve the backlog of other issues in the case that have piled up on her plate. Smith's defenders have criticized Cannon for what they see as a plodding pace in resolving pretrial matters, and tensions between the special counsel and the judge have flared in recent months over a series of puzzling rulings that threaten to derail the case. Quote, finalization of a trial date at this juncture, said the judge, before resolution of the myriad of interconnected pretrial and classified evidence issues would be imprudent and inconsistent with the court's duty to fully and fairly consider the various pending pretrial motions, Cannon wrote in the 5-page order. That reshuffling further clouds the picture for Smith, who is also awaiting a Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity that could determine whether his other case against Trump, Charges in Washington, D.C. for attempting to subvert the 2020 election can move forward this year. Trump is currently on trial in a third criminal case in Manhattan, in which he is accused of falsifying records of a hush money payment to a porn star. He's also facing criminal charges in Georgia for attempting to interfere with the 2020 results in that state. Trump has sought to delay all of his criminal cases until after this year's election. If he wins, he could shut down the two federal cases brought by Smith, and the state cases in New York and Georgia also might have to be frozen. Now, friends, before we have a quick look at Judge Cannon's new order, remember, Donald Trump and his attorneys proposed an August trial date as a satisfactory start date for Donald Trump's Florida case. And what did Judge Cannon do? She said, no, I will be setting no trial date. Now, let's turn to this newly issued order by Judge Cannon. In the case of the United States of America versus Donald Trump, Waltine Nauta, and Carlos de Oliveira, defendants, Judge Cannon says, among other things, the court determines that finalization of a trial date at this juncture, before resolution of the myriad and interconnected pretrial and CIPA classified information issues remaining and forthcoming, would be imprudent and inconsistent with the court's duty to fully and fairly consider the various pending pretrial motions before the court, critical CIPA issues, and additional pretrial and trial preparations necessary to present this case to a jury. The court, therefore, vacates, that is, cancels, the current May 20, 2024 trial date to be reset by separate order following the resolution of the matters before the court, consistent with the defendant's right to due process and the public's interest in the fair and efficient administration of justice. In reaching this decision, the court has fully evaluated the parties' positions as expressed during the March 1, 2024 conference and in related and subsequent filings, including the public's interest in the efficient administration of justice. Upon such review, the court finds that the ends of justice served by this continuance outweigh the best interest of the public and the defendants in a speedy trial. That's right, friends. Judge Cannon decided that it's just not in the best interest of the public to set a trial date in this case, to move the case in the direction of a trial. Yeah, Judge Cannon caught this case, and she's now in the process of killing the opportunity of the American voters to know in advance of the next presidential election whether the Republican candidate is guilty of unlawfully retaining classified information, of obstructing justice, and of violating our nation's espionage laws. Because according to Judge Cannon, it's just not in the public's interest to have this case tried and resolved before the next presidential election. Friends, the recusal bucket runneth over. Maybe we can again raise our voices in unison and urge the powers that be to file a motion to recuse Judge Cannon from this case. Have her removed from the case. Have a fair, independent, impartial, unbiased judge sit and preside over the criminal trial of Donald Trump down in Florida. Because Judge Aileen Cannon's impartiality might reasonably be questioned, which is the standard in the federal law, where a judge must recuse, shall recuse themselves from presiding over a case if their impartiality might reasonably be questioned. How about Jack Smith file the recusal motion, let her decide it, appeal it to the 11th Circuit, let's litigate it in the full light of day with all of the evidence, all of the facts, and all of the applicable case law, and let the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals make a decision as to whether she ought to be allowed to preside over a criminal trial involving a defendant who appointed her to the bench, gave her that sweetheart lifetime appointment for openers. Let's litigate the issue. Let's get it authoritatively resolved by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, because if we don't, no one will have confidence in the outcome of the trial. Why do I say that? Because every time she makes a call against Donald Trump, Trump supporters will say, well, yeah, that's because she got all this criticism, so now she's got to throw these makeup calls to Jack Smith just to give the appearance of fairness. And every time she makes yet another call, as she has over and over again, some of them have been reversed by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, another call in favor of Donald Trump. I know I won't have confidence that she has fairly and impartially sort of abided by the rule of law. I don't know how anybody on either side, and I hate that we have sides, but anybody on either side will have confidence in the outcome of this trial with Judge Aileen Pecker Cannon at the helm. So let's at least file and litigate the motion in the full light of day and get it resolved by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.